Hello, this is Mark Grier, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the July 23rd issue of the New York Times, an Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Okay, first article today. Jordan stands by U.S. troop presence, though they make the kingdom an Iranian target. Relying heavily on U.S. aid and protection, Jordan is unlikely to restrict the American military presence there, despite escalating Iranian airstrikes. For some 3 decades, Jordan has been an important base for American military operations around the Middle East. Now, Jordan is paying a price. Over recent days, Iran has stepped up its airstrikes against the kingdom, targeting U.S. military forces there. But even as sirens are sounding over Jordan, it has refrained from limiting the American presence. The country's exceptional dependence on the United States has kept Jordan from curtailing those military activities, analysts say. Jordan has come to rely on the United States for billions of dollars in economic and military aid provided over their decades-old relationship, as well as for protection in a dangerous region. Unlike some of its Gulf Arab neighbors, with abundant oil and other natural resources, Jordan is a resource-poor country heavily reliant on foreign aid. Last year, the United States gave the kingdom $1.65 billion in economic and military assistance, according to Jordanian officials. And while some other American allies in the region have restricted Washington's ability to base troops on their territory and fly aircraft over it during the war with Iran, U.S. officials say Jordan is not in a position to place such limits. Jordan is a weak state in the Middle East, said Sean Yam, a professor of military science at Temple University and author of the book Jordan, Politics in an Accidental Crucible. It's fairly small, and it's surrounded by regional threats, and it does need some sort of great power patrol or outside protector, and the U.S. has played that role for several generations now. The assistance Jordan gets from the United States, which dates back to the 1950s, is far too large for anyone else to provide, Mr. Yam said. Since the United States and Israel launched the war against Iran in late February, it has retaliated in part by carrying out strikes on American allies in the Middle East. During the first months of the war, Iran primarily targeted Israel and U.S. allies in the Gulf, but it also directed hundreds of drones and missiles at Jordan. The conflict quickly hurt Jordan's tourism industry, which provides up to 18% of the country's revenue, just as the high season was getting underway. Although most of the missiles and drones were intercepted, airlines canceled flights, and would-be visitors canceled hotel reservations. Now, with the U.S.-Iran ceasefire unraveling, both sides have ramped up attacks, and Iran has widened its targeting in recent weeks. On Sunday, Jordan's air defenses shot down 3 Iranian missiles, and Jordanian military said, while a 4th landed in an unoccupied area. This Iranian strategy of vertical escalation hitting its neighbors aims at creating pressure on those neighbors, aims at creating pressure on the United States, said Hassan Alamani, director of the Center of Strategic Studies, a think tank that advises the Jordanian government on national security. Iran said recently that some of its strikes on Jordan had targeted fuel tanks at their air base in Azraq, a hub for the U.S. force, and aircraft shelters at other bases, according to the Fars news agency, a semi-official Iranian news outlet. Previously, Iran said it had targeted radar and communication systems used by U.S. forces. 2 U.S. soldiers were killed and a third was missing on Friday in an Iranian attack on the Salti base. 3 other attacks on U.S. forces in Jordan earlier in the week wounded dozens of American soldiers and damaged a number of Black Hawk helicopters. American forces have long operated out of Jordanian air bases, and the kingdom has been a base for such American military activities as the fight against the Islamic State, the training of rebel fighters during Syria's civil war, and the invasion of Iraq. There are now nearly 4,000 American service members in the country, according to a congressional report. Mwafi Saltai and other bases have been adapted to accommodate a permanent U.S. presence. The infrastructure in Jordan has been pretty robust from a U.S. standpoint for a while, said Grant Rumley, a former Middle East advisor at the Pentagon and now a senior fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. He likened it to a land-based aircraft carrier. That base is also relatively remote, allowing U.S. forces to operate without attracting unwanted attention, Mr. Rumley said. And since Jordan is farther from Iran than Gulf countries, U.S. forces in Jordan have more time to respond to missile and drone attacks, he said. In the run-up to the war with Iran and in its early days, the U.S. military moved some of its troops from several Gulf Arab nations to relatively more secure locations in Jordan and neighboring Israel, U.S. officials said. War in Iran has revealed how important Jordan is to the United States, said Mr. Alamani. This year, he said, Washington has increased military aid to Jordan by $500 million. Jordanian officials often emphasize the strategic importance of their relationship with the United States. In a call with President Trump in April, King Abdullah II stressed Washington's pivotal role in the Middle East, specifically its in prospects for de-escalating the conflict with Iran. Earlier this month, Jordan's Army Chief, Major General Youssef Hanadi, and the U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, Daniel Zimmerman, discussed expanding military cooperation further, according to the Petra State News Agency in Jordan. The Jordanian government rarely discusses the extensive U.S. military presence publicly, nor has Jordan openly criticized the U.S. for its airstrikes on Iran or for launching the war alongside Israel, though analysts say that the government was strongly opposed to the conflict from the beginning. Okay, moving on. Next article. Oil-rich Saudi Arabia isn't short on energy. Here's why it's going nuclear. The world's largest exporter of crude oil stands to benefit from diversifying its energy sources and freeing up more oil to sell. The United States' deal to allow a nuclear enrichment program in Saudi Arabia has stoked longtime fears of a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the kingdom's de facto leader, has not ruled out the possibility of building nuclear weapons in the future, especially if Iran, Saudi Arabia's neighbor and longtime adversary, does so. But Saudi Arabia's nuclear ambitions go back decades, and the country has reasons for building a nuclear energy program that are unrelated to developing weapons. Here are a few key reasons Saudi Arabia may want a civilian nuclear energy program. To diversify its economy. In 2022, crude oil accounted for 40% of Saudi Arabia's gross domestic product, The country's leaders have long believed that the nation's economic survival will depend on reducing reliance on fossil fuel exports. Despite a wealth of natural resources, Saudi Arabia has recorded a budget deficit in all but one of the past 10 years. And it has expensive ambitions, including sci fi like construction projects and plans to build power hungry artificial intelligence data centers. The U.S. Israeli war with Iran has demonstrated the risks of an economy that depends heavily on oil. Blockades in the Strait of Hormuz have sharply reduced Saudi Arabia's oil exports, though experts say the steep war driven rise in oil prices has helped counteract the economic blow. Leaders have hoped Saudi Arabia could also become a major exporter of uranium ore. However, it is unclear whether the nation's deposits are plentiful or accessible enough to meaningfully contribute to the economy. But if Saudi Arabia is allowed to enrich uranium, whether mined domestically or imported, it could use the material to help meet its growing energy needs, freeing up more of its fossil fuel reserves for sale to other countries. Or to forward a vision of modernization. A decade ago, Prince Mohammed announced sweeping plans to transform Saudi Arabia, declaring that he would end its addiction to oil. The plans, known as the Vision 2030 Initiative, included major financial reforms, cultural changes, and construction projects. Saudi leaders have also announced ambitious climate goals. In 2021, the country pledged to produce half of its electricity from renewable sources by 2030. Today, those goals appear out of reach. Less than 1% of Saudi Arabia's electricity is generated by solar and wind, while almost all the rest produced by gas and oil, according to the World Nuclear Association. Climate researchers and activists have accused the kingdom of disrupting global climate summits, impeding agreements to decrease reliance on fossil fuels. Nevertheless, leaders in Saudi Arabia may see a nuclear enrichment program as part of the green, modernizing version they have espoused to foreign governments, businesses, and their own people. Another is to boost prestige. Saudi leaders known that developing a domestic nuclear energy program with the understanding that weapons could follow will also have implications for the kingdom's regional and global standing. Even without weapons-grade uranium, Saudi leaders may see a nuclear energy program as the first step towards building a deterrent to nuclear-armed nations. The deal also allows Saudi Arabia to deepen its ties with the United States. During years of negotiations with U.S. leaders over the terms of a possible Saudi nuclear program, the kingdom repeatedly threatened to work on the technology with other countries, including China and Russia. But Neil Qualliam, a Middle East energy policy expert at the London-based research institute Chatham House, said the kingdom waited to find a path forward with the United States because of the young Saudi leadership's confidence in the U.S. remaining the dominant geopolitical player for decades to come. Okay, next article. Google hit with $1 billion fine for abusing its power in Europe. At a tense moment for transatlantic trade, the European Union accused Google of anti-competitive business practices. In a decision likely to intensify transatlantic trade tensions, European Union regulators on Thursday hit Google with a $1 billion fine for allegedly undercutting competition through its dominance as a search engine. President Trump has previously threatened to retaliate against the European Union for what he views as the unfair targeting of American technology companies. The Google decision comes when he is weighing a new batch of tariffs on the European Union and other major trading partners. In explaining Thursday's fine of 890 million euros, regulators in Brussels said Google had used its position as the world's largest search engine to unfairly boost its services in areas like shopping, travel, games, and language translation. Google displayed its own services more prominently at the top of search results, while relegating competing services further down the page, according to regulators. The European Commission, which conducted the investigation, also concluded that the tech giant used unfair restrictions on its Google Play App Store that prevents app developers from communicating with users or conducting transactions that could reduce the fees Google can collect. The Commission, the executive arm of the European Union, said that Google violated the Digital Markets Act, known as the DMA, a law passed in 2022 to stop the largest tech platforms from using their interlocking services to box in users and squeeze out rivals. Authorities have argued the big tech companies have become so dominant in areas like internet search, smartphones, e-commerce, and social media that they serve as gatekeepers and determine the fate of other businesses and can harm competition. The best products should succeed because they're better, not because they're owned by the company running the search engine, said Teresa Ribera, the executive vice president of the European Commission overseeing competition policy. She said in a statement on Thursday, "This is the promise of the DMA, protecting fairness, choice, and innovation in digital markets for the benefit of all European citizens." Google has 60 days to comply with the decision, including increasing the prominence of rival online services, or risks further penalties of up to 5% of its worldwide revenue. The company has been a frequent target of the European Union regulators over the past decade, having been fined more than 10 billion euros since 2017. Kent Walker, Google's general counsel, said Thursday's decision would require product design changes that will harm services for European users. This isn't fair competition. It's product degradation, he said. Regulation should improve products, not make them worse. The fine is small in comparison to Google's overall business. On Wednesday, Google's parent company, Alphabet, reported a quarterly profit of $112.1 billion, boosted by investments made in SpaceX and Anthropic. Officials in Brussels will be waiting to see how Mr. Trump responds to Thursday's decision. On Friday, the White House is expected to announce new tariffs on trade with the European Union and other countries. A European Union official said that the fine was announced on Thursday because it was ready, without an eye on American trade developments, and that it would not come as a surprise to the Trump administration. Since the earliest days returning to the White House, Mr. Trump has warned it would take responsive actions against regulation of American tech firms. Last month, Mr. Trump threatened tariffs against countries for digital services taxes against American firms. In December, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative said European companies, including the Swedish music service Spotify, German industrial giant Siemens, and French artificial intelligence developer Mistral could be targeted with fees or new restrictions. American regulators also targeted Google. Last year, the company was ordered to share research results and some data with rival companies as part of a landmark monopoly case that has some similarities to Thursday's ruling in Brussels. The European Union has long been the world's most aggressive regulator of the tech industry in areas like data privacy, competition, and harmful online content. Even as leaders in the region have taken steps to erase rules for artificial intelligence and other technology to boost economic growth, the bloc has pushed forward with investigations and penalties of some of the industry's biggest companies. Google was ordered this month by the European Union regulators to lift restrictions that limit how rival AI companies can reach users of Android smartphones. Meta was told this month to make major design changes to Instagram and Facebook to make the services less addictive. European regulators have also targeted Chinese companies. Alibaba's AliExpress was fined the equivalent of $629 million last week for the sale of illegal, unsafe, and counterfeit products on its platform. In February, TikTok, owned by ByteDance, was told to make changes to make its services less addictive. The European Union is also considering a law to bar young people from social media. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, next article. The crypto bill is mired in debate over rules to stop the president from selling coins. Democrats and Republicans are haggling about the Clarity Act, a major bill pushed by the crypto industry, as it moves closer to a Senate vote. The sweeping cryptocurrency bill is approaching a final vote in the Senate this summer with support from Republicans and some Democrats, and backed by an industry that has spent tens of millions of dollars to shape it. But lately, a major sticking point has emerged: the $104 billion in crypto revenue that President Trump disclosed in June, after a year of astonishing money-making by his family's network of crypto businesses. Now, as the landmark legislation known as the Clarity Act inches toward passage, Senate Democrats are pushing for strict language in the bill that would bar public officials from selling digital currencies. On Wednesday, Republican senators released a new draft of the bill that contained a version of those restrictions, including language making it illegal for the president and other U.S. officials to issue or sponsor cryptocurrency. Democrats and progressive advocacy groups immediately fired back, arguing that the draft did not go far enough to stop Mr. Trump from using crypto to enrich himself. With the midterm elections approaching, the debate is threatening to engulf the Clarity Act, showing how Mr. Trump's crypto dealings have rippled through Washington. The ethics issue has become the linchpin of whether this gets bipartisan support, said Cody Carbone, the chief executive of the Digital Chamber, a crypto trade group. Democrats have made this the most important issue for them. Passage of the Clarity Act is a top priority for the crypto industry. Under the Biden administration, the Securities and Exchange Commission pursued an aggressive enforcement campaign against crypto firms, filing lawsuits that argued that digital coins should be regulated like stocks and bonds. The Trump administration reversed course and dropped almost all of those suits. The act, which passed the House of Representatives last year, would effectively lock that policy position into law, so that crypto companies can operate freely in the United States without fear of a regulatory crackdown from a future administration. Democrats have voiced concern about the bill for months, pointing out that it would give authority over the industry to a short-staffed federal agency that has limited enforcement capacity. But no issue has attracted more scrutiny than Mr. Trump's crypto ventures. Last month, the president issued his mandatory financial disclosure report, which showed that he had made more than $2 billion during the first year of his second term, most of it from crypto. Those gains came at the expense of ordinary investors, who lost a total of $3.8 billion after buying Mr. Trump's so-called meme coin, novelty cryptocurrency known for its volatility. Nothing in the latest draft of the Clarity Act would prevent Mr. Trump from continuing to profit from his meme coin or other crypto ventures, according to Democrat staff and other industry experts who reviewed the language. The Senate majority released a bill that would do effectively nothing to stop the main ways he made that money, or could keep making it. Scott Graycock, Deputy Executive Director of the advocacy group Transparency International, U.S., said in a statement, it would leave the underlying businesses, revenue streams, and family arrangements largely untouched. The Clarity Act is the result of years of lobbying by the crypto industry. During the 2024 election, a network of pro-crypto super PACs spent more than $130 million to elect industry-friendly legislators. That spending has paid off. Last July, Mr. Trump signed a pro-crypto bill known as the Genius Act, which governs a type of digital currency called a stablecoin. The same month, the House voted to pass a version of the Clarity Act. The bill soon ran into obstacles in the Senate, including pushback from the banking industry. But in May, a bipartisan group of senators voted to advance it from the Senate Banking Committee, a crucial step. Now the legislation awaits a vote in the full Senate, with only weeks to go until the August recess, which is widely seen as the deadline for Congress to act on the bill before the midterm elections. The politics are complicated. Republicans hold a thin majority in the Senate, meaning the Clarity Act would require at least some Democratic votes to pass. And Mr. Trump's crypto deal-making has prompted even industry-friendly Democrats to dig in. The ethics language unveiled on Wednesday emerged from discussions between state Republicans and the White House, which has supported the bill. In a statement, a White House official called it the most comprehensive and wide-ranging ethics provision in history, and said the administration had bent over backwards to find a solution. But critics soon pointed out apparent loopholes, one which former regulator called laughable. The bill would bar public officials from issuing or sponsoring digital currencies while they were in government. The rule also applies to spouses, but not to children. The proposed restrictions appear unlikely to curb Mr. Trump's money-making. His two largest crypto ventures were started shortly after he became president. In one case, a mere 72 hours before his inauguration. And the rule would stay in effect only until January 2029, meaning that a future Justice Department would be unable to prosecute Mr. Trump for potential violations, experts said. Still, Senate Republicans praised the language as a historic compromise that addressed concerns from Democrats. History will remember this as the moment a president chose a higher standard of ethics than the law required of him, said Senator Cynthia Lummis, a Republican of Wyoming. Okay, next article from the opinions section. It's an article written by Sharon Waxman. Let this be the final word on culture war feuding. What a nothing burger the whole woke controversy over the Odyssey turned out to be. Many thousands of people lined up to see the movie this past weekend, selling out IMAX screenings. So many people, in fact, that the film made $264 million globally on its opening weekend, an astounding result for a 3-hour epic about Bronze Age warriors. Critics have called the film a classic, and the online rabbit rousers, edged on by Elon Musk, who dismissed the film over so-called woke choices, like the casting of Lupita Nyong as Helen of Troy and the transgender actor Elliot Page as the warrior Sinon, have all pretty much shut up or been shut up by the film's overwhelming success. Thankfully, a livelier and smarter debate has emerged in its place, one that's a lot more relevant in Western society in the midst of an identity crisis. When is war justified? What moral boundaries do we owe our enemies? What transgressions merit the ultimate punishment? And who, in the end, determines civilization's common set of values? Suddenly, there's an actual conversation worth having. The Odyssey tackles these questions through an examination of the abuse and neglect of Xenia, the Greek god's sacred code of hospitality that requires treating strangers as honored guests. Odysseus' clever Trojan horse trick, which led to the fall of Troy, violated Xenia by misleading the city's residents into believing they were receiving a gift. In Christopher Nolan's retelling, this deceit metastasized for its hero into a larger moral failing, one that haunts Odysseus as he makes his treacherous 10-year journey home. The betrayal of Xenia is not the only failing that plagues him. He also consumed with shame over abandoning his family and losing the lives of all of his men. In Mr. Nolan's film, these issues weighed on him in a way that many scholars and historians say is scarcely found in Homer's original. The Odyssey isn't woke, wrote the conservative commentator Michael Brendan Doherty on X. Its view on war and the gods is closer to mine than it is to Homer's. The Odysseus portrayed in the film, he pointed out, is morally horrified by war, while in Homer's version, war is a normal and potentially glorious enterprise. According to the classicist Emily Hauser, here is a modern-day Hollywood hero who learns remorse for the atrocities he commits and spends much of his time trying to excuse having lost all of his men, and retrospectively with a final journey not in Homer to pay homage to them, earning their forgiveness. This mapping of contemporary Western values onto the plot of a Greek epic poem is a true artistic project of Mr. Nolan's film, and it makes for a better political debate than anything about colorblind casting or imagined DEI. Today, all the prelist noise around the film's ostensible wokeness seems predictable and tiresome, the kind of drivel that drives our exhausting culture wars, a ritual of the online mob that insists on rehashing the same right versus left, Hollywood versus Main Street argument that film audiences clearly ignored. In an interview with Jon Stewart, Mr. Nolan discussed the link between his vision of Odysseus and Robert Oppenheimer, the subject of his previous Oscar-winning film. What so stayed with me in that movie, said Mr. Stewart, was the weight that Oppenheimer must have felt when he saw the reality of what he had created. Mr. Nolan agreed, explaining how he deliberately brought the gravity of Oppenheimer into his new project by exploring the question of what happens when a man participates in something too destructive to be fully understood. This doesn't make the film woke, it makes it worthy of thoughtful decision. In the months before the film's release, Mr. Musk gleefully fed the culture wars by accusing Mr. Nolan of desecrating Homer, and by affirming an online post that claims the Odyssey was part of a left-wing plan to destroy Western civilization and everything that helped create it. This week, Mr. Musk announced that before year's end, there will be another full-length version of the Odyssey created using his artificial intelligence program, Grok, which he promised would be true to the art of Homer. None of us are holding our breath. We're too busy engaging in the much more interesting debate that Mr. Nolan's film has already inspired. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the New York Times on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Okay, next article. Mamdani knew he couldn't arrest Netanyahu, but he could denounce him. In a video message, the mayor of New York City said he could not legally arrest Israel's prime minister, but reinforced his position as a voice of the international left. Mayor Mamdani recently disclosed that he was in active conversation with his legal team about whether he could make a good campaign vow to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, should he set foot in New York City. What the mayor neglected to say in a wide-ranging interview with the New York Times last week was that he had already been advised by lawyers that he had no authority to do so. His declaration risked a rare public clash with his police commissioner, Jessica Tisch, whose pro-Israel stance runs counter to the mayor's longstanding position. Ms. Tisch had no intention of arresting Mr. Netanyahu, and the police department was already to make that clear with a formal statement declaring that it lacked the authority to take such action. Lawyers agreed that such an arrest was not within the scope of the police department. NYPD's position is entirely rooted in the law, an agency spokesman, Delaney Kemper, said. Mr. Mamdani quickly pivoted. On Tuesday evening, he released a direct-to-camera message in which he called Mr. Netanyahu a war criminal, but admitted the New York City police officers were powerless to arrest him. In the 2-minute address, which he garnered more than 64 million views on X, Mr. Mamdani set between flags of the United States and of the city of New York, and spoke solemnly about the impact of Israel's actions in Gaza, which followed the deadly Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th of 2023. The spot appeared under the words, "Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal." The mayor then said that city lawyers had determined he did not have the authority to arrest Mr. Netanyahu and urged the federal government to enforce the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant for the Israeli leader. The United States is not party to the ICC, and President Trump said that Mr. Netanyahu would not be arrested in the country. Mr. Mamdani recorded the video Tuesday afternoon and was personally involved in editing the clip, according to a city official familiar with the preparation. The message seemed designed to assure his supporters that he remained steadfast in his criticism of Israel despite his inability to make good on his campaign vow, while reassuring others that he would not overstep his authorities. The video instantly reinforced Mr. Mamdani's stature as a preeminent voice of the international left and gave the issue prominence at a time when Mr. Netanyahu's conduct of the war in Gaza has led two independent United States inquiries and humanitarian groups inside and outside of Israel to accuse him of perpetrating a genocide, an accusation that Mr. Netanyahu denies. It is clear that we do not have the independent legal authority to enforce this warrant, the mayor said. The federal government, however, does, and I call on them to join the ICC and execute this warrant. The video also drew backlash from pro-Israel groups and from the Israeli government. Several said the video could inflame anti-Semitism and accused the mayor of being overly focused on international relations at a time when his city is facing acute problems. When Mr. Mamdani was interviewed by the Times, the mayor had already been told by his lawyers that he could not carry out his threat, but he wanted to let his supporters know that on his own terms, according to several people familiar with his thinking, who were granted to remain anonymous to speak freely about the sensitive matter. After his remarks to the Times prompted another news cycle about the legal impracticability of arresting Mr. Netanyahu, Mr. Mamdani's team decided that it needed to hasten the plan, those people said. So, Mr. Mamdani sought to use his skills as a gifted communicator to turn the problem into a political advantage. In an interview on CNN on Wednesday, Danny Danon, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, agreed with Mr. Netanyahu, saying that Mr. Mamdani picks on the prime minister and that his statements about arresting Mr. Netanyahu were a stunt. Prime Minister Netanyahu will come to the UN, will speak in the General Assembly, will defend our country, Mr. Danon said. And if you want to arrest someone, I think you should arrest Mayor Mamdani because he continues to incite against Israel. Though Israel occupies a central place in the mayor's political formation, Mr. Mamdani said in the video and at a news conference on Wednesday that his concern was not specific to Benjamin Netanyahu and that he would support enforcing an arrest warrant for anyone wanted by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. That includes leaders of Hamas, he suggested. The court had sought arrest warrants for 3 Hamas leaders in connection with the October 7th attack, but Israel said it had killed all of them by the time the warrants were issued in November 2024. When it comes to the ICC, they've put forward warrants, whether it's Yahya Sinwar, whether it's Benjamin Netanyahu, I think a few other members of the Israeli government. I believe that all of them should be honored, he said, referencing a Hamas leader who was killed by Israel in 2024. Originally, Mr. Mamdani's team had planned to release some sort of statement attesting to the legal hurdles to arresting Mr. Netanyahu before the Prime Minister's expected attendance at the annual meeting of the United Nations General Assembly in September. After that plan changed, city officials hurriedly called people with strong feelings about Israel to alert them to the imminent release, the officials said. The mayor's statement on Benjamin Netanyahu affirms his commitment to universal human rights and dignity to all. Hassad Dandia, the Brooklyn borough historian, and an ally of the mayor, had said. Even if he does not have the power to enforce an ICC warrant as a municipal leader, it's about the principle of the matter. Nurdin Kaswami, the co-founder of the pro-Palestinian group Within Our Lifetime, said she welcomed Mr. Mamdani's statement but added that this has never been about one individual and urged him to do more. In a statement, the UJEA Federation of New York, a Jewish philanthropic group, accused Mr. Mamdani's video of being rife with distortions and disinformation, and said that he repeated criticism of Israel puts Jews at greater risk and leaves many Jewish New Yorkers feeling targeted and unwelcome in the city we call home. The annual UN General Assembly meeting draws officials from around the world, and several of its meetings have been marked by tensions between city leaders and foreign officials they find to be politically unsavory. The results have often been more theatrical than carceral. In 1995, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani ordered a top aide to kick Yasser Arafat, the chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization, out of a concert at Lincoln Center that was held for world leaders in town to attend the assembly meeting. In 2009, Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi, was denied permission to erect a tent, his preferred mode of lodging, for the assembly meeting in locations across the New York area, including Central Park and Westchester estate owned by President Trump. On Wednesday, Mr. Mamdani said he sympathized with New Yorkers who were disappointed to hear that Mr. Netanyahu would not be arrested during his anticipated September visit, but noted that one of the bedrocks of our city is protest. I understand that because we are talking about someone who has been charged with crimes against humanity, someone who has visited this city on many an occasion, and who has been welcomed by previous mayors, Mr. Mamdani said, and I want to make it very clear that welcome ends with me. Okay, next article. OpenAI says its AI models went rogue and attacked a digital library. The incident, which targeted the computer system of another company called Hugging Face, happened while OpenAI was testing the system. OpenAI said on Tuesday that two of its artificial intelligence models went rogue and successfully hacked into Hugging Face, a digital library of AI technology that is popular among developers. The incident, which happened last week while OpenAI was testing the cybersecurity capabilities of its system, displayed the kind of science fiction potential that AI companies warned would soon become a reality. AI labs like OpenAI and Anthropic have, over the past year, released AI models that are customized to expose cybersecurity problems, while warning that their technology could pose new risks by finding holes in corporate computer networks faster than defenders could fix them. OpenAI's revelations on Tuesday are an indication that those security incidents are already starting to happen, and even savvy AI companies may not be entirely ready for them. New AI systems can take multiple steps, figure ways around obstacles, and find new ways to attack a network, said Alex Levinson, a cybersecurity consultant focused on autonomous capabilities. That's a genuine threshold, and it's going to become a normal part of the security landscape, he said. The intrusion into Hugging Face began when OpenAI tested a combination of two of its models, GPT 5.6 Sol and a more powerful unreleased model, to see how well the models could chain together online vulnerabilities into a successful cyber attack, OpenAI said in a blog post about the incident. The trial was designed to keep the models in a safe testing environment, known as a sandbox, OpenAI said. But the models found a vulnerability that allowed them to escape the sandbox and connect to the internet. Then they targeted Hugging Face because they inferred that the library, which contains millions of AI models, could hold clues about how to successfully pass the evaluation. It seems to me that OpenAI did not adequately create a sandbox as a testing environment, said Mr. Mulligan, a professor in the School of Information at the University of California, Berkeley, who focuses on security in AI systems. He questioned whether passing a test was worth the potential damage of an AI models escaping into the wider internet. What do we gain if this is the only way these tests can be configured? What are the risks, he said. OpenAI said it was working with Hugging Face to fix the issues that led to the attack. We consider this to be an unprecedented cyber incident involving state-of-the-art cyber capabilities and are responding accordingly, OpenAI said in a blog post. We are implementing strict controls and infrastructure configuration at the cost of research velocity while vulnerabilities are patched. Hugging Face said last week that it had detected the intrusion and knew it had been caused by an autonomous system, but did not say at the time that OpenAI was responsible. Clem Delaunay, the chief executive of Hugging Face, said on Tuesday that his company had worked closely with OpenAI over the previous 24 hours to address the attack. He also said in a statement that he was grateful for the collaboration with OpenAI in the wake of the hack. This incident, possibly the first of its kind, proves a point we've long believed. AI safety won't be solved by any single company working in secret, he added. AI models have proved to be adept at programming, and that has made them useful to both hackers and people in charge of protecting computer networks. Okay, the next, possibly last article for today. This appears to be an older article that I'll go ahead and read. It might be interesting. Is there a least bad alcohol? We all know about the health risks of drinking, but if you're going to partake, it's natural to want to minimize the damage. Question. I've been trying to cut back on alcohol lately, but I do drink occasionally. Are any types of alcohol less risky than others? If you've heard that red wine is better for you than beer or liquor, or that clear liquor, like vodka or gin, is less harmful than dark liquor like rum or whiskey, we have bad news. Alcohol is alcohol, said Jürgen Reim, a senior scientist at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto. Drinking any type of alcohol in any amount is bad for health. Still, experts say it's sometimes not reasonable or even practical for people to avoid alcohol entirely. So if you're going to drink, there are some strategies you can take to reduce your risk and to avoid some of the other unpleasant effects of drinking, like hangovers. Why alcohol is so harmful? Well, when you have a drink, your body turns the ethanol that's present in the alcoholic beverage into a really nasty substance called acetaldehyde, which can damage your DNA, said Timothy Stockwell, an alcohol researcher at the University of Victoria in Canada. Many tissues in the body, including those in the mouth, throat, liver, colon, and breasts, are susceptible to this harm. And when that DNA gets repaired, cancerous mutations may rise. This is why drinking increases the risk of developing at least 7 types of cancers, said Catherine Keyes, a professor of epidemiology at Columbia University. Excessive alcohol use, which includes having 8 or more drinks per week for women, or 15 or more a week for men, or 4 or more drinks per occasion for women, or 5 or more for men, is also linked with many other health conditions. These include heart and liver disease, depression, anxiety, and memory problems, according to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. The more ethanol in your drink, the more harmful it is, Dr. Keyes said. One way to assess this is to look at a drink's alcohol by volume, or ABV, which manufacturers must list on product labels. If you're choosing between 2 beers of the same size, for instance, and one is 4% ABV and the other is 8%, the 4% beer will expose you to half as much ethanol. In general, beer has less ethanol than wine per ounce, and wine has less than liquors like vodka and tequila, Dr. Keyes said. But there can be large variations within these categories, Dr. Stockwell said, and some strong beers, for instance, have ABVs that are higher than some of the wines, or even some liquors on the extreme end. How to drink wisely. A good rule for reducing your exposure to ethanol is to generally choose drinks with lower ABVs, the expert said, but it's important to pay attention to how much you're drinking as well. A standard 12-ounce pour of a 5% ABV beer typically has the same amount of ethanol as 5 ounces or a 12% wine, or 1.5 ounces, which is a shot, of a 40% liquor. It can be tricky to calculate the ABV of cocktails, said Dr. Pengyang Ting, an assistant professor of clinical medicine at the Tulane University School of Medicine, said they are often made with sodas, juices, or sometimes multiple types of alcohol. For this reason, he recommends sticking with wine or beer in situations where you want to know exactly how much ethanol you're consuming. Some types of alcohol are also quite high in calories, which then consumed in excess can increase the risk of weight gain and obesity. And some cocktail mixers, like juices and sodas, can contain added sugars, also raising the risk of obesity and other health conditions like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. Dr. Keyes also recommended against consuming alcoholic drinks that are mixed with caffeine, like espresso martinis or vodka Red Bulls. The energy boost you get from them may make you feel less inebriated than you really are, potentially prompting you to drink more and to become more drunk, Dr. Keyes said. And while there's no evidence that darker liquid are more harmful to health than clear ones, there is limited research suggesting that some darker liquors can cause more severe hangovers, said Demeas Rosahoff, a professor at the Center for Alcohol and Addiction Studies at Brown University. Darker alcohols like bourbon, rum, or brandy tend to have higher levels of congeners, substances that are created during the fermentation process and contribute to a drink's flavor, aroma, and color. More congeners typically translate to worse hangovers, he said. There can be exceptions to the clear is better rule. However, Dr. Rosanoff added, some tequilas, which can be clear or light-colored, for instance, can be high in congeners and may lead to worse hangovers. Okay, you've been listening to a reading of articles from the July 23rd issue of the New York Times. Your reader today has been Mark Reier. Thank you so much for listening.